Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a vast ocean of information and distill it into those essential, surprising nuggets you need to navigate the world feeling truly well-informed. Today, we're plunging into a topic that, for many of us, feels like a perpetual, high-stakes arms race: the accelerating pace of cyber threats. It's hard to shake the feeling that we're constantly playing defense, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah. The landscape isn't just evolving, it's shape-shifting in real time. It's incredibly challenging for organizations and even for us as individuals to keep pace with adversaries who are constantly innovating.
And that's precisely our mission with this deep dive. We're going to unpack the current and future landscape of cyber attacks, drawing insights from the latest reports and real-world examples. Our goal is to help you, our listener, grasp the intricate methods adversaries are now employing, everything from leveraging advanced AI to sophisticated social engineering and exploiting complex vulnerabilities. It's really about being thoroughly informed so you can better anticipate what's next and know what to watch out for.
Because anticipating the next move is truly the most effective defense in this environment. We'll give you the context and the key details to understand not just what's happening, but why these threats are evolving in the ways they are.
Okay. Before we plunge deeper, we want to give a significant shout out to our sponsor, Stonefly. They are a true leader in enterprise storage, backup, and disaster recovery, as well as cutting-edge AI storage and cloud solutions. In a world where cyber threats are escalating at an alarming rate, Stonefly is providing something absolutely critical: secure, ransomware-proof storage. They offer specialized features like air-gapped and immutable storage, which essentially means your data is isolated and unchangeable by attackers, providing, well, an unparalleled layer of protection. If you're looking for robust, secure storage solutions that can stand up to today's threats, definitely reach out to them. You can contact sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo. That's sales@stonefly.com. So let's kick things off by really digging into this ever-accelerating threat landscape. It feels like this adversarial enterprise is taking an unprecedented toll on organizations worldwide. What are we seeing in terms of the sheer speed, volume, and sophistication of these attacks?
Well, the data is pretty stark, and it definitely backs up that feeling of being on the defensive. We're witnessing a continuous escalation of cyber attacks in every dimension: speed, volume, sophistication. It just makes protection increasingly difficult for organizations of all sizes. The numbers from CrowdStrike's counter-adversary operations team, which is like an elite group dedicated to tracking these actors, are eye-opening. They now track a staggering 257 total adversaries.
257, wow.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting. 26 of those are new named adversaries just in 2024 alone. They're also tracking 140 active malicious activity clusters. This isn't just a list. It indicates a highly dynamic, professionalized, and rapidly expanding threat actor ecosystem that is constantly evolving its targets, its evasion techniques, its intrusion methods, and how they exfiltrate data. It's a full-time global business for them, basically.
26 new ones in a single year. That's an astonishing rate of expansion. And when you talk about speed, there's a concept that, frankly, gives me chills because it highlights just how little time defenders have. It's called breakout time. For listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly does that mean and what are we seeing in terms of its pace right now?
Right. Breakout time is a critical metric. It refers to how quickly an adversary can move laterally across a network once they gain that initial foothold. Think of it as the time it takes for an intruder, once inside your front door, to move into other rooms, establish deeper control, and potentially exfiltrate data or deploy ransomware. It's the crucial window defenders have to detect and stop an intrusion before it spreads and becomes a much larger incident. And the statistics are indeed alarming, even terrifying. The average breakout time has plummeted to just 48 minutes.
48 minutes. That's fast.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, that's down from 62 minutes in 2023. But what's truly astonishing, and something that keeps security professionals up at night, is the fastest observed breakout time, a mere 51 seconds.
51 seconds. That's not even enough time to grab a coffee, let alone mount a coordinated defense. This really puts into perspective the urgency. It means the old detect and respond models, which might have given you hours or even days to react, are now largely obsolete. You're effectively in a race against the clock, where seconds, not minutes, define your window to prevent catastrophe. This forces organizations to rethink their entire security posture, shifting from passive defense to real-time preemptive measures. And it's not just about speed, it's also about how these attacks are changing. There's a significant shift away from traditional malware towards something called malware-free and interactive intrusions. What does that mean for how adversaries operate on the ground?
It's a fundamental change in tradecraft, yeah, and it's why these threats are so insidious. Threat actors are increasingly moving away from traditional malware, which often leaves behind identifiable digital fingerprints that are, well, easier for security tools to detect and block. Instead, they're using hands-on keyboard techniques. This means a human adversary is directly interacting with the compromised system, just as a legitimate IT administrator or employee would. They're using existing, legitimate tools already present on the network, things like PowerShell or remote desktop protocols, which makes their malicious actions blend seamlessly with normal operations. This makes them exceptionally difficult to detect with traditional signature-based security tools.
So it's kind of like an intruder just walking into your house and using your own tools against you, rather than bringing their own specific identifiable lock-picking kit. It's a lot harder to spot because it looks like someone who belongs there.
Precisely. Exactly.
Yeah.
The numbers really underscore this shift. In 2024, 79% of all detections were malware-free.
79%.
Yeah, that's a massive jump from just 40% in 2019. This clearly shows a significant strategic shift by adversaries, and we saw a 35% year-over-year increase in interactive intrusion campaigns. These aren't automated scripts. These are human operators stealthily navigating your network, learning its layout, and adapting their actions in real time.
Given this surge in interactive intrusions, a natural question arises. Are these attacks broadly distributed, or are certain industries and geographies feeling the heat more than others?
It's a global phenomenon, but there are definitely patterns. For the seventh year running, the technology sector remained the most targeted industry by far. This isn't surprising, really, given the value of intellectual property and sensitive data held by tech companies. But we also saw high volumes of interactive intrusions in consulting firms, manufacturing, and retail. Geographically, North America, East Asia, and Europe consistently ranked as the top regions experiencing these interactive intrusions. It highlights the global reach and the diverse high-value targets these sophisticated operations are pursuing.
Okay, so if they're moving so fast and using these malware-free hands-on keyboard techniques, how are they getting in the first place? What's the business of initial access all about, and why is it such a critical component of every breach?
Initial access is, quite literally, where every single breach begins. It's the critical first step for adversaries. In 2024, initial access vulnerabilities accounted for a staggering 52% of all observed vulnerabilities. This isn't just a number. It means over half of all successful breaches started with an unpatched system, a weak password, or some other easily compromised entry point. This truly underscores how vital it is to secure these perimeter points. If you can stop them at the door, you often prevent the entire chain of attack.
So they're exploiting known weaknesses to get their foot in the door. But I've also heard about something called access brokers in the cyber underground. Is that related to this initial access problem?
Yes, very much so. The rise of access brokers is a significant and worrying trend. These are specialists who dedicate themselves to acquiring initial network access to organizations, often through exploiting these initial access vulnerabilities or by compromising legitimate credentials. Once they have that access, they don't necessarily carry out the attack themselves. Instead, they sell that access to other threat actors, including ransomware operators, nation-state groups, or other e-crime syndicates. This has become a thriving dark marketplace, making it easier for less skilled actors to launch sophisticated attacks. In fact, advertisements for access brokers increased by 50% year over year. In 2024 alone, there were 4,486 advertised accesses, with peaks in January, May, and December. It's a clear sign of the professionalization and specialization within the cybercrime ecosystem.
That's a whole dark marketplace thriving on vulnerabilities and stolen credentials. It makes you realize how organized this truly is. And I'd imagine that abusing valid accounts, like stolen login credentials, is also a huge part of this initial access problem, especially with cloud environments.
Absolutely. Valid account abuse was responsible for 35% of all cloud incidents. Adversaries are actively seeking and exploiting legitimate credentials to gain their initial foothold in cloud environments. What's particularly stealthy about this tactic is that attackers often don't change the credentials they've stolen. They want to maintain persistent, unnoticed access, blending in by using the legitimate account as if nothing is amiss. They might get these credentials from information stealers like Stealik or Vidar, which are updated to target cloud accounts specifically, or or by abusing trust relationships between business partners, effectively hopping from one compromised entity into another. In some cases, like with the DPRK Nexus adversary famous Coloma, they even use insider threats, getting one of their operatives hired at a target organization and then using that legitimate access to deploy backdoors in cloud tenants. It's a long game for them.
That's a highly sophisticated, patient, and truly unsettling approach. And just when we thought we had our hands full with all of that, along comes generative AI. As if the landscape wasn't complex enough, Gen AI has truly burst onto the scene. What's striking to me is how quickly it seems bad actors are integrating it. Is it really a game changer, or are we seeing more of an amplification of existing threats? And what does that look like on the ground?
That's an excellent point, and the answer is, well, both. Generative AI, or Gen AI, has indeed become an early and avidly adopted tool for nation-state, e-crime, and even hacktivist adversaries. Its force multiplier impact, meaning it amplifies existing capabilities, and its incredibly low barrier to entry make it a popular addition to their toolkit. What's fascinating and concerning is that easy access to commercial large language models, or LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini, is drastically shortening the learning curves and development cycles for these malicious actors. This allows them to significantly increase the scale and pace of their activities. While it's still early days, and much of the malicious use is iterative or evolutionary, meaning they're improving existing methods rather than inventing entirely new ones, we are seeing it manifest in some truly novel and effective ways, particularly in areas like social engineering.
That's a terrifying thought. Social engineering already preys on human nature, on our innate trust or our tendency to make mistakes, and now you're saying AI is making it even more convincing and harder to detect.
Exactly. Gen AI is dramatically enhancing the effectiveness of social engineering efforts, making them far more sophisticated and believable. For example, we've seen famous Colema, the DPRK Nexus adversary we just mentioned, use Gen AI to create highly convincing fake IT job candidates. They develop fictitious LinkedIn profiles, complete with AI-generated text and AI-generated images that look perfectly legitimate, all designed to infiltrate target organizations. They even provide answers during virtual interviews that are likely derived from LLMs, making these fake personas incredibly difficult for human recruiters to spot. They're not just creating a fake email, they're creating a fake person.
Wow, that's a whole new level of impersonation. What about in the realm of direct financial fraud, like business email compromise or BEC? We've heard about deepfakes being used there.
It's being leveraged there, too, with alarming results. We've seen incidents where unidentified threat actors have used deepfake video clones of real CFOs to trick victims into transferring massive sums of money. One incident alone accounted for a staggering $25.6 million. Voice clones of CEOs have also been used to solicit fraudulent payments. And to quantify just how effective Gen AI is making these, academic research has confirmed that LLM-generated phishing emails have a significantly higher click-through rate, 54% compared to just 12% for human-written ones.
54% versus 12.
Yeah, that's a huge, almost five-fold difference in effectiveness. It's making these traditional attack vectors far more potent.
And it's even trickling down to mobile malware, isn't it? That feels like a direct invasion of our personal digital space.
Yes. The Gold Pickaxe mobile malware, for instance, goes a step further. It steals biometric facial data from victims' phones, specifically to generate deepfake videos or perform face swap operations. This level of sophistication, driven by AI, is making it much harder for individuals to discern real from fake, especially when you're interacting with what appears to be a trusted contact or financial institution.
So it's clear that Gen AI isn't just about direct attacks. It's also about broader influence in operations. How is it being used in information operations, often called I/O, and cyber network operations, or CNO?
Right. Gen AI tools are becoming incredibly powerful instruments for creating tailored content at scale for information operations campaigns. These are efforts to influence public opinion or political discourse. A critical point here is that this AI-generated content is often not checked for accuracy by consumers, meaning adversaries can achieve their goals even if the target eventually realizes the content is fabricated. For example, the China-aligned Grain Cicada network used a Chinese-language LLM system along with over 5,000 inauthentic social media accounts to amplify politically divisive issues during the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
That sounds like a terrifyingly efficient way to spread disinformation and influence.
It absolutely is. Similarly, Russia-aligned operators have explicitly used LLMs for disinformation campaigns. And during the Indian election season, we saw Gen AI used to create videos and images for political purposes. Beyond disinformation, criminal actors are leveraging it too. They've used LLM-generated text templates for spam email campaigns distributing malware like Snake Keylogger. Even big game hunting ransomware operators, known as APT-INC, deployed a data destruction script that was likely LLM-authored, indicating AI is now touching core malicious activities. Nitro Spider used LLM-generated decoy websites for malvertising campaigns, designed to look legitimate but secretly serve malware.
It's clear that bad actors are exploring every avenue. Are they even using LLMs for more technical aspects, like coding actual malware or developing exploits?
Indeed. Discussions on criminal forums show actors openly talking about using LLMs for coding malware in languages like C++ and generating shell commands for system interaction. There's even evidence that an LLM was likely used to develop an alleged exploit for a command injection vulnerability, CVE 2024-3400. While that particular exploit was ultimately ineffective, it highlights the exploration and rapid experimentation happening within these adversarial groups. They're effectively outsourcing part of their R&D to AI, you know?
And what about the cloud? We're seeing more and more services integrating AI with massive processing power. Are adversaries finding ways to exploit Gen AI within cloud environments directly?
That's a definite and growing area of concern. Adversaries are actively exploring Gen AI and LLMs for cloud operations. As Gen AI becomes more deeply integrated into cloud services like Azure AI Foundry or Google Cloud Vertex AI, we anticipate increased exploitation of these services for various malicious purposes, including data theft, manipulation of AI models, and unauthorized access to valuable computing resources. One emerging tactic we're already seeing is something called LLM jacking.
LLM jacking, that sounds specific. What exactly is that?
It involves threat actors compromising stolen cloud credentials to gain unauthorized access to AI services that run on powerful cloud infrastructure. This fuels a criminal market for unauthorized LLM queries, essentially stealing expensive computing power. We've observed examples of this with North American consulting and technology companies where threat actors attempted to resell access to machine learning models or simply run massive numbers of queries they hadn't paid for, all gained through compromised credentials. It's a new frontier for data theft and resource abuse, turning cutting-edge AI infrastructure into a criminal commodity.
It's unsettling to think about how quickly these new technologies are being weaponized and integrated into criminal operations. But beyond the tech, the human element remains a massive vulnerability. Social engineering continues to evolve, often sidestepping even the most advanced technical defenses. Why does it persist as such an effective tactic in the face of all this technology?
Well, social engineering remains incredibly potent because it doesn't target technical flaws. It targets human weakness, our innate trust, or simply human error. This makes it highly effective against even the most hardened security defenses, as technology alone can't patch human fallibility. What's also notable is a strategic shift. Instead of trying to deliver traditional malware, which security tools are good at spotting, adversaries are leveraging legitimate remote monitoring and management, or RMM, tools. These are tools like TeamViewer or Microsoft Quick Assist that IT departments legitimately use to provide support. This means malware is becoming non-essential for successful operations. Attackers are simply using what's already trusted and available to the user, effectively turning an organization's own tools against them.
That's a truly scary thought. The tools meant to help us are being turned against us, making their malicious activity almost invisible within normal operations. I've heard a lot about phishing lately, which seems to embody this shift. What's the deal with that, and why has it become so prevalent?
Phishing, or voice phishing, has seen explosive growth because it adds a layer of real-time human interaction that can be incredibly convincing. These are attacks where adversaries call victims directly to amplify their social engineering efforts. The numbers are shocking. Phishing attacks skyrocketed by an astounding 442% between the first and second half of 2024.
442%.
Yeah, that's an insane jump, indicating just how effective and scalable this tactic has become for attackers.
That's truly mind-boggling. How do these phishing attacks typically play out? What's the common script or sequence?
The common tactic involves attackers impersonating IT support staff. They'll often call users under the pretext of resolving a perceived issue, often after an initial spam bombing campaign has flooded the victim's inbox. This creates a plausible reason for the call, as the victim might be confused by the fake alerts. Once they have the user on the line, the attackers, who are often highly skilled conversationalists, persuade them to join a remote session using legitimate RMM tools like Microsoft Quick Assist or TeamViewer. Sometimes they even use Microsoft Teams from external tenants, making it appear like an official communication. It's all about building trust and then guiding the user to unwittingly provide access to their system.
Do you have a specific case example of how these phishing attacks unfold, perhaps with an adversary group that's particularly effective at it?
Yeah, a prime example is the e-crime adversary Curly Spider. They are incredibly fast and efficient. In one observed case, they achieved initial user interaction, successfully socially engineered the victim, and established a backdoor account for persistence on the network, all in under 4 minutes.
Under 4 minutes.
Yes. This terrifyingly short time frame often leads directly to the deployment of Black Boster ransomware. What makes Curly Spider so effective is their ability to blend into normal network activity. They execute their malicious payloads under legitimate binaries, making it incredibly difficult for traditional defenses to spot. They don't even need to break out to another device. They compromise the network and secure long-term access almost instantly, all through this human-driven phishing.
That speed is truly terrifying, as you said. And
Yeah.
it's not just phishing. There's also callback phishing and help desk impersonation. These sound like direct assaults on different points of trust. How do they work?
Callback phishing, typically utilized by the Russia-based e-crime adversary Chatty Spider, usually starts with a lure email that contains an urgent message, perhaps about an imminent charge or an overdue payment. Crucially, the email instructs the user to call a provided number to dispute the charge. This puts the user directly in touch with the adversary. Once on the phone, the attackers guide users to install legitimate RMM tools like WinSCP or rclone, which they then use for data exfiltration and extortion, sometimes demanding up to $8 million USD. They primarily target the legal and insurance sectors, highlighting their strategic focus.
So it's about turning the victim's own action, their attempt to resolve an issue, against them, and help desk impersonation. That sounds like a direct assault on the front lines of an organization's security, its IT support.
It is, and it's particularly insidious. Threat actors call an organization's IT help desk, impersonating a legitimate employee. Their goal is to persuade a help desk agent to reset passwords or multi-factor authentication, or MFA, for an account. MFA is a security measure that requires more than just a password, like a code from your phone, so resetting it bypasses a major defense. Scattered Spider, for instance, has been using this technique effectively since early 2023 to gain access to single sign-on, or SSO, accounts in cloud applications. SSO is what lets you log into multiple services with one set of credentials, so compromising it opens many doors. They often target academic and healthcare entities, which can lead to sensitive data exfiltration or even modification of employee payroll data.
But how do they get the information needed to impersonate an employee convincingly enough to trick a help desk? That seems like it would require some significant reconnaissance.
That's where the professionalization of social engineering really comes into play. Adversaries often obtain the required identity data, like full name, date of birth, employee ID, or manager name, from publicly available resources, social media profiles, or even underground markets where this information is sold. They compile these profiles carefully. They're also strategic about when they call. Calls frequently occur outside business hours, which likely allows them to maintain longer access to the compromised account before the legitimate owner notices suspicious activity, or before IT staff can conduct a thorough review. They also manually delete suspicious emails or redirect them to avoid detection, covering their tracks within the victim's own inbox.
So this isn't just opportunistic, it's a planned, organized effort. Are we seeing more evidence of this professionalization in how these social engineering teams are built, almost like a corporate structure?
Absolutely. There's open recruitment on e-crime forums for English-speaking callers. They're specifically seeking individuals with a good command of English, knowledge of RMM tools, and experience conducting remote sessions, often requiring a sales background to be convincing. There's also a clear demand for services like phone number spoofing, which makes their calls appear to come from a legitimate or local number, and call encryption services to avoid detection. All of this points to a sophisticated, business-like approach to social engineering, highlighting that these phone-oriented social engineering tactics will continue to be a significant threat precisely because of this professionalization.
Okay. Beyond the e-crime groups, nation-state cyber operations are also a major concern, particularly from China and the DPRK. Let's start with China. What are we seeing in terms of their cyber enterprise maturing, and how has their operational tempo changed?
Right. China's cyber espionage operations reached new levels of maturity in 2024. They're exhibiting a much higher operational tempo and engaging in prolific targeting across the globe. This isn't surprising, really, given decades of government investment into their cyber workforce and programs, which has led to highly matured capabilities and an increasing number of specialized adversaries. CrowdStrike alone named 7 new China Nexus adversaries in 2024, demonstrating this expansion.
And the scale of their activity. Has it increased across various sectors, not just their traditional targets?
Dramatically so. Overall, China Nexus activity increased by 150% across all sectors on average. Some industries saw even more staggering increases, with 200% to 300% more attacks in financial services, media, manufacturing, and industrials and engineering. Even traditional targets like government, technology, and telecommunications saw a substantial 50% increase. These adversaries are also prioritizing Operation Security, or OPSEC, which means they are very careful to hide their tracks and remain undetected. They're also managing their infrastructure at scale using Operational Relay Box, or ORB, networks.
Operational Relay Box networks. What are those exactly, and how do they help them hide?
Think of ORB networks as a complex series of proxy servers or compromised systems that bounce their signals around, creating a convoluted path. This makes it incredibly difficult to trace their true origin and hide their activities at scale. It's sort of like sending a letter through dozens of different post offices in different countries before it reaches its destination, making it nearly impossible to figure out where it started. The motivation for all this activity is likely deeply rooted in China's desire for regional influence and their broader national rejuvenation strategy, which aims for what they call cyber power. This means developing world-class cybersecurity skills and expanding state oversight of information networks, all part of a grand geopolitical strategy. And we're seeing very specialized adversaries emerge from this ecosystem, each with their own unique focus and tradecraft.
Can you give us a few examples of these specialized Chinese adversaries and what makes them unique?
Certainly. We have Liminal Panda, who demonstrates extensive knowledge of telecommunications networks and expertly uses compromised telecom infrastructure to move across regions. Then there's Locksmith Panda, targeting technology, gaming, energy, and telecom entities in Taiwan, Indonesia, and Hong Kong activists, likely for intelligence collection and strategic advantage. Operator Panda focuses on telecom and professional services, and they are particularly adept at heavily exploiting internet-facing appliances like Cisco switches for initial access. Vault Panda exploits web-facing applications, targeting a broad range of sectors including financial services, gambling, technology, academic, defense, and government entities, often looking for sensitive data or intellectual property. And finally, Envoy Panda targets government entities, particularly diplomatic ones, in Africa and the Middle East, showing increased anonymization attempts in their operations to make attribution even harder. These are highly focused, sophisticated groups, each contributing to China's overall cyber objectives.
That's a clear picture of China's evolving and highly specialized capabilities. What about the DPRK, North Korea? How are their cyber operations evolving, particularly given their unique economic constraints?
DPRK Nexus adversaries, such as Labyrinth Cholima, Velvet Cholima, and Silent Cholima, consistently target defense and aerospace entities, often seeking military intelligence or advanced technology. However, their primary focus, which is a consistent theme across all their operations, is generating currency. This isn't just about profit, it's a critical lifeline for the regime, often used to circumvent international sanctions. Famous Cholima, for instance, innovated their currency generation operations in 2024 by significantly scaling their IT worker schemes globally. This is a truly audacious approach.
IT worker schemes, what exactly does that entail? It sounds like something out of a spy novel, almost.
It does, but it's very real and quite sophisticated. CrowdStrike Falcon adversary Overwatch responded to 304 famous Cholima incidents in 2024, with nearly 40% of these representing insider threat operations. These operatives obtain positions at companies worldwide under fake personas, often using Gen AI tools to socially engineer recruiters during the job application process, making their fake identities incredibly convincing. Once hired, they receive company-provided laptops, which they then send to third-party facilitators running laptop farms.
Laptop farms? You mean physical locations with dozens of laptops running simultaneously? That truly sounds like something out of a spy thriller.
It does, but it's a documented reality. These laptop farms have been identified in places like Illinois, New York, Texas, and Florida. The DPRK operatives install remote management tools and browser extensions on these company-provided laptops, maintaining full control. While some exfiltration of code or intellectual property is observed, the vast majority of these insider threats appear to be motivated by the salary. It's a large-scale, highly organized, and audacious way to generate consistent funds for the regime, exploiting the global remote work trend.
So money is truly the driving force here for DPRK. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about vulnerabilities. It feels like defenders are in a constant race against time, especially when it comes to newly discovered flaws. What's the trend in vulnerability exploitation? Are attackers focusing on specific types of weaknesses?
You're right, it's absolutely a race against time, and it's often a losing one due to sheer speed. Threat actors continue to heavily target devices at the edge of networks, especially unmanaged, internet-exposed hosts and network appliances. These devices are attractive because traditional security visibility is often limited there. They frequently have unresolved security shortcomings due to patching complexities, and they are, by design, deliberately exposed to the internet. They are the low-hanging fruit at the perimeter, you know?
And how are attackers achieving unauthenticated remote code execution, which is essentially taking total control of a system without needing to log in on these devices? Are they chaining exploits or using other clever tricks?
Yes, exploit chaining and feature abuse are key sophisticated tactics. Attackers are increasingly achieving unauthenticated RCE through two-layered approaches. First, exploit chaining involves combining two or more exploits for a seamless attack sequence. For example, they might chain a bypass vulnerability, which helps them get past a security check, with a privilege escalation vulnerability, which grants them higher access, as seen with Palo Alto Network's PAN-OS software vulnerabilities, CVE 2024-0001, and CVE 2024-9474, or Cisco iOS vulnerabilities, CVE 2023-2198, and CVE 2023-2273. It's like finding two small cracks in a wall that, when connected, allow you to create a large hole.
And the chaining allows them to bypass traditional patching priorities, correct? Because normally organizations prioritize the big critical vulnerabilities.
Exactly. This is a crucial strategic advantage for adversaries. While high-severity, pre-authentication vulnerabilities usually get immediate, out-of-band patches, meaning they're fixed urgently outside of normal update cycles' lower priority, post-authentication exploits often receive less attention and might even be ignored because they appear less critical on their own. But by chaining these, attackers can still achieve their primary objective of unauthenticated RCE, effectively bypassing packing processes that prioritize based on severity scores alone. It's a clever way to slip through the cracks.
That's incredibly clever and frustrating for defenders. What about abusing legitimate features? How does that fit into their strategy?
That's the second layered approach, and it's a classic living off the land technique. Attackers don't always need complex custom malware that might be detected. After gaining initial access through an exploit, they often rely on product features that are already integrated into the system, like command shells. A common example is Microsoft SQL Server's XPC MD shell feature, which can be abused to achieve RCE, as seen in vulnerabilities like CVE 2023-48788 and CVE 2023-27532. This points to adversaries using existing trusted tools to blend in and avoid detection, making their malicious activity look like legitimate system administration.
It sounds like they're recycling old tricks and finding new ways to make them effective, almost like a continuous process of discovery, rediscovery, and circumvention. Is that an accurate way to describe this trend?
Absolutely. Attackers frequently revisit previously established attack vectors and vulnerable components. It's a persistent trend. For instance, in September 2024, an unknown threat actor exploited a zero-day file disclosure, CVE 2024-21287, to obtain credentials. A zero-day means it was a vulnerability unknown to the vendor or public. They then chained this with a deserialization vulnerability, CVE 2024-20953, for code execution. A deserialization vulnerability is basically exploiting a flaw in how an application processes data it receives, which can lead to it executing malicious code. What's notable here is that CVE 2024-20953 was a previously disclosed vulnerability for which no public exploit or technical details were available, yet this actor developed one and chained it. This indicates incredibly specialized product knowledge and persistence.
That's a deep level of understanding of specific software, and it shows how determined they are. And you mentioned the Windows ANCAS SRV driver, too. How does that fit into this rediscovery idea?
Yes. The Windows MS SSRV driver is another great example of how one discovery can open up an entire attack surface. After a logical vulnerability in it was exploited in March 2023, it drew significant attention from researchers and threat actors. This single discovery led to at least 16 new vulnerability disclosures since August 2023. It shows how one initial exploit can reveal a whole class of similar weaknesses that were previously overlooked. We also see this with Apache OFBiz vulnerabilities like CVE 2024-45195, where attackers exploit something called desynchronization capabilities. This is a clever trick where they manipulate the timing of communications to make the system think they're authenticated, even when they're not, effectively slipping past security checks even after multiple patches. The core flaw simply persists, allowing attackers to continually find new ways to exploit it.
And Microsoft Outlook vulnerabilities have also seen this kind of cat and mouse game, right? Where mitigations are bypassed almost immediately.
Indeed. CVE 2023-2397 was an Outlook vulnerability that was quickly followed by bypasses like CVE 2023-2324 and CVE 2023-35384. These examples clearly demonstrate how attackers circumvent mitigations for the same components. It's a continuous game of whack-a-mole where patches are released and then attackers find new ways around them for the same underlying flaw. This highlights the ongoing relentless challenge for defenders to keep up.
It's a constant battle, and it's certainly not limited to on-premise systems anymore. In fact, as organizations rapidly adopt cloud services, the cloud and SaaS frontier are increasingly becoming new targets for adversaries. What are the key trends here? Are new types of actors emerging in this space?
We're seeing a significant shift in focus, with a 26% increase in new and unattributed cloud intrusions in 2024 compared to the previous year. This clearly indicates that more threat actors are specifically targeting cloud services. It's not just a side gig for them anymore. It's a dedicated area of operation. Attackers are increasingly using valid accounts for initial access to the cloud, leveraging cloud environment management tools for lateral movement, and even abusing cloud provider command line tools that legitimate users employ.
So it's not just about breaking into a server, it's about gaining control of the cloud infrastructure itself or the services running on it. And how are they primarily gaining this initial access to cloud environments? Is it different from on-premise?
While some methods overlap, abusing valid accounts is the primary initial access vector to the cloud, accounting for a notable 35% of all cloud incidents. What's particularly stealthy about this tactic is that attackers often don't change the credentials they've stolen, which helps them avoid detection by the legitimate account holder. They want to maintain persistent, unnoticed access, blending in by using the legitimate account as if nothing is amiss. They want to fly under the radar for as long as possible.
And how are they getting their hands on these valid cloud accounts? Are we talking about large-scale credential theft?
Several methods contribute to this. Information stealers like Steal and Vidar are being updated specifically to target cloud accounts, providing attackers with instant access to credentials and email lists that can then be leveraged for further attacks like password spraying. Another method involves abusing existing trust relationships, where adversaries exploit connections between business partners and their cloud tenants to gain access without needing to directly obtain credentials in the victim's tenant. It's like finding a trusted key to a back door. Famous Choloma, who we discussed earlier, even capitalized on this by having one of their operatives hired at a target organization and then deploying a backdoor in their cloud tenant as an insider threat. It's a testament to the diverse and adaptable tactics being employed.
That's a truly sophisticated long game, using insider access to establish a foothold in the cloud. And as more organizations migrate massive amounts of sensitive data to cloud-based software as a service, or SaaS, applications, I imagine those are becoming prime targets too. Services like Microsoft 365, Salesforce, all of them.
Absolutely. SaaS application exploitation is a major threat to watch in 2025. With so much sensitive data migrating to these platforms from internal documents to customer databases, adversaries are adapting their tradecraft to exploit them for data theft, lateral movement within an organization's network, and extortion. This often starts with a compromised single sign-on, or SSO, identity, which, as we discussed, allows access to multiple applications with one login. Scattered Spider, for example, has been using this tactic effectively since at least 2022.
Once they get that SSO access, what are they typically looking for within these SaaS applications? Are they just siphoning off everything, or are they quite targeted?
They're highly targeted, searching for very specific high-value information. This includes account credentials and network architecture documentation to facilitate further lateral movement within an organization's systems, as well as cyber insurance and revenue information, which helps them inform their extortion demands. Microsoft 365, particularly SharePoint for document storage and Outlook for email, are popular targets. SharePoint was accessed in 22% of relevant intrusions and Outlook in 17% in the first half of 2024. Attackers actively search for strings like password manager, server inventory, and VPN instructions. Critically, many organizations don't adequately audit the data employees upload to cloud storage or transmit internally via email, making these repositories incredibly valuable and often overlooked targets.
And they can even use access to these SaaS tools to target third parties, can't they? Turning one victim into a launchpad for broader attacks.
Yes, that's another critical and growing aspect. Scattered Spider, for example, obtained API keys, which are basically programmatic access credentials, to a commercial SMS distribution application from a compromised email inbox. They then used that application to send over 700,000 smishing messages, leveraging the compromised sauce tool for downstream targeting of third parties. Smishing, for those unfamiliar, is phishing through SMS messages. We've also seen campaigns like Atlas Lion abuse HR-related sauce apps for gift card fraud, and a customer database compromise campaign in 2024 that targeted data warehousing platforms using credentials obtained from information stealer logs. It truly illustrates the expanding attack surface and the incredible adaptability of adversaries who are always looking for the path of least resistance or greatest impact.
Now, we've talked a lot about the technical side and general trends, but sometimes a specific case study really brings these abstract threats into focus and shows the real-world impact. We have a compelling one today: the proliferation of mercenary spyware, specifically focusing on a company called Paragon Solutions. What can you tell us about this company and its background?
Okay. Paragon Solutions is an Israeli company founded in 2019 that sells a highly potent spyware product known as graphite. What's particularly interesting about Paragon is their public claim of having stringent safeguards in place to prevent the kind of abuses that other infamous spyware vendors, like NSO Group with Pegasus, are notorious for. They claim to sell only to governments that abide by international norms and respect fundamental rights and freedoms. End quote. However, recent findings from Citizen Lab, a prominent cybersecurity watchdog, really challenge these claims and have exposed significant discrepancies.
And they have a U.S. presence, right?
Yeah.
Is that significant given the broader global context of mercenary spyware?
Yes, very much so. Paragon Solutions US Inc. was established in Delaware in March 2021. Their senior leadership includes American personnel with strong links to the U.S. government, including a CIA veteran and former defense contractors. What's more, in December 2024, Paragon Israel shares were transferred to a U.S. company, Paragon Parent Inc., reportedly in a deal worth up to $900 million. This parent company has links to a U.S. private equity firm, AE Industrial Partners, and to Red Lattice Inc., further bolstering their connections to U.S. government intelligence and military personnel. It's a complex web of affiliations. The Drug Enforcement Administration, for instance, has reportedly used Paragon's graphite spyware, though a contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement was reportedly paused at the end of 2024 following public scrutiny.
So Citizen Lab investigated Paragon's infrastructure to understand its reach. How did they go about mapping it, and what did they find that allowed them to connect the dots?
Right. Citizen Lab's investigation began by mapping server infrastructure they believe Paragon and its customers use, effectively looking for the digital fingerprints of the spyware. They identified two distinct tiers. Tier 1 involves victim-facing servers, which are typically cloud-based servers consistent with command and control infrastructure. These are the servers that send commands to the infected devices and receive data back. They identified these using a unique digital signature they called Fingerprint P1, finding 150 related certificates, which are like digital IDs. These are the servers victim devices would communicate with directly.
And Tier 2, what kind of infrastructure did that reveal, and why was it so critical for attribution?
Tier 2 consists of IPs from local telecom companies, not cloud providers, which are suspected to be directly from Paragon itself or their customer premises. These were identified using Fingerprint P2. What was critical here is that Tier 2 nodes in Israel, where Paragon is based, were found to return web pages with the title Paragon. More damningly, a specific TLS certificate, a type of digital certificate used for secure communication, was found containing the literal name graphite, which is the spyware's name, and installer server, a term very similar to what NSO Group's Pegasus uses for its infection server. This combination of evidence provides strong, circumstantial, almost undeniable support for the attribution of this infrastructure directly to Paragon.
And based on this infrastructure mapping, were they able to identify any suspected Paragon customers, potentially revealing which governments are using this spyware?
Yes. They identified suspected customer deployments, meaning places where the spyware infrastructure was active, in Australia, Canada, Cyprus, Denmark, Israel, and Singapore, as well as a German data center. It's important to note that this methodology can't enumerate all customers, as some take very sophisticated measures to prevent exposure. Italy, for instance, is an acknowledged customer not directly found this way by Citizen Lab, which highlights the limitations even of advanced investigative techniques.
That brings us to a particularly interesting point, the Canadian connection. What did Citizen Lab discover there that linked Paragon to Canadian law enforcement?
The investigation surfaced potential links between Paragon Solutions and the Canadian Ontario Provincial Police, or OPP. The IP address for a Canadian customer, codenamed CAP, was delegated to an ARN customer named Integrated Communications. ARN is the American Registry for Internet Numbers, which manages IP address distribution. The address of one of these Integrated Communications customers matches precisely that of the Ontario Provincial Police General Headquarters. This strongly suggests the OPP as a potential Paragon Solutions customer, raising significant questions about the use of such technology within Canadian law enforcement.
And this isn't an isolated incident for Canadian law enforcement, is it? It seems to fit into a broader pattern of using these types of surveillance technologies.
Not at all. Canadian law enforcement has a history of using controversial surveillance technologies. The OPP was previously linked to procuring Stingray cell site simulators, which mimic cell towers to gather phone data. More recently, the RCMP, Canada's National Police Force, disclosed using on-device investigative tools, or ODITES, which is essentially a euphemism for spyware, in 32 investigations between 2017 and 2022. Public records also suggest a growing ecosystem of spyware capability among Ontario-based police services, with the OPP, Toronto Police Service, York Regional Police Service, Hamilton Police Service, and Peel Regional Police Service, all having used or sought authorization for ODITs. This reflects a widening gap in public awareness regarding the extent to which mercenary spyware is being deployed in Canada, often under the radar.
This all sounds incredibly pervasive. But Citizen Lab's work with Meta and WhatsApp led to some concrete action and real-world impact, especially in Italy. Can you walk us through what happened there and how this collaboration was pivotal?
This is where the impact becomes very real for individual victims. Citizen Labs shared their infrastructure details with Meta, which proved pivotal to Meta's ongoing investigation into Paragon. This collaboration allowed WhatsApp to identify, mitigate, and attribute a Paragon zero-click exploit. A zero-click exploit is particularly insidious because it can infect a device without any interaction from the user. You don't have to click a malicious link or open an infected attachment. On January 31st, 2025, WhatsApp took action and notified approximately 90 accounts that they believed were targeted with Paragon spyware, including journalists and civil society members in Italy.
And were these infections forensically confirmed on the targeted devices?
Sure.
Because that's the ultimate proof, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Citizen Lab conducted forensic analysis on the Android devices of Italian targets who received WhatsApp notifications. They found clear traces of Big Pretzel, which is an Android forensic artifact, a unique digital trace or piece of evidence left behind believed to uniquely identify Paragon's graphite spyware. For example, on Dr. Giuseppe Beppicacci's phone, Big Pretzel was present on multiple dates in late 2024 and early 2025, specifically December 22, 26, and January 3, 13, 23, 28, and 31. This indicated the spyware was consistently running. It also infected other popular messaging apps on his device. Mr. Luca Cazzarini's phone also showed Big Pretzel present on December 23, 2024. WhatsApp itself confirmed that Big Pretzel is associated with Paragon, stating they've seen how commercial spyware is weaponized against journalists and civil society.
And what about iPhones? Was there a related case there, as Apple is also known for issuing threat notifications?
Yes, a related case involved David Yambio, a close associate of Mr. Cazzarini and Dr. Taccia. He received an Apple threat notification in November 2024. Forensic analysis of his iPhone found small pretzel activity in June 2024. Apple confirmed this matched a similar attack they had identified, investigated, and mitigated in iOS 18. While no conclusive technical link to Paragon has been established yet for this specific iPhone case, the contextual links, his close association with confirmed Paragon targets, are significant and warrant continued investigation. It suggests a broader pattern of surveillance targeting this specific network of individuals.
And this targeting of Italian civil society members, particularly those involved in migrant rescue operations, well, what's the broader context here? It seems to reflect deeper political tensions.
It absolutely does. The individuals targeted, like Mr. Pezzarini and Dr. Caccia, are deeply involved in migrant rescue operations, which has become a highly contentious and politically charged issue in Italy. Over the past 2 years, humanitarian organizations conducting sea rescue operations have faced increasing pressure from Italian authorities, including new laws that have been denounced by the UN as effectively punishing those who help migrants. So the targeting fits within a broader context of political tension and attempts to exert pressure on humanitarian organizations in Italy. Notably, Mr. Cazzarini and Father Mattia Ferrara received meta notifications in February 2024 regarding targeting with different surveillance technologies, suggesting a broader, multifaceted surveillance operation against this civil society group.
The Italian government's response to these revelations has been quite a ride, hasn't it? A series of denials and then confirmations.
It's been a classic example of initial denials giving way to partial confirmations, followed by more secrecy. On February 6, 2025, the Italian government initially denied knowledge of the affair. However, by February 12, just 6 days later, the Minister for Relations with Parliament publicly confirmed that the government was a Paragon customer, claiming the systems were active but denying spying on the known targets identified by WhatsApp and Citizen Lab. The director of the External Intelligence Service also confirmed Paragon's graphite spyware had been deployed by his agency on multiple occasions. Days later, on February 14th, the government announced a temporary suspension of deployment. Yet by February 19th, they classified all information regarding the matter, stating they couldn't respond to parliamentary inquiries on national security grounds. Interestingly, the Justice Minister later contradicted this, stating no agency under his ministry had a contract. It's a very murky picture, indicating a lack of clear, unified messaging. It's also worth noting that Italy has a history not just as a customer, but also as a producer of mercenary spyware, adding another layer of complexity.
This all raises a critical point about forensics in an age of sophisticated spyware. Citizen Lab talks about the twilight of forensics. What do they mean by that, and why is this type of spyware so hard to detect?
Paragon takes a different approach to deploying its spyware compared to older methods. Rather than activating its own distinct process that might leave obvious forensic traces, like a standalone malicious program running it, it appears to silently load its spyware into the device's existing legitimate apps and processes. These legitimate apps then become the unwitting hosts for the spyware. This makes forensic analysis much more challenging because the malicious activity blends into normal app operations, leaving fewer obvious signs for an analyst to easily find. It requires a much more detailed understanding of how each host app functions and how the spyware subtly manipulates it.
So it's harder to spot. But does this approach have any downsides for the spyware vendor, or does it provide any new avenues for detection that weren't there before?
It is a trade-off. While it creates significant difficulties for traditional forensic analysis by blending in, it also likely multiplies the number of entities that have some form of visibility into Paragon's activities. App developers, for instance, collect diagnostic data, crash reports, and other telemetry from their apps. This diagnostic data could, in theory, contain clues or anomalies related to the spyware's activity that wouldn't normally be visible. This highlights the critical importance of collaboration between civil society organizations like Citizen Lab, forensic experts who can reverse engineer these complex attacks, and the threat intelligence teams within major tech platforms like Meta and Apple.
So company notifications, like those from WhatsApp and Apple, become even more crucial in this new landscape, acting as an early warning system.
Absolutely pivotal. Notifications from companies like WhatsApp and Apple are essential for revealing these attacks and fostering what we call an accountability ecosystem. The cases we've discussed today, including Mr. Yambio's iPhone case, would have largely remained undiscovered by the victims themselves without these proactive notifications to users. They are a critical ingredient in holding mercenary spyware companies accountable and shedding light on practices that often thrive in the shadows.
Okay. Given everything we've just discussed, the accelerating threats, the role of AI, the human vulnerabilities, nation-state activities, the constant exploit race, and the new cloud frontier, what are the key proactive defense strategies organizations should be implementing to protect themselves in this rapidly evolving threat landscape? What can you actually do about this?
Right. Understanding these threats is truly the first step, and the next is taking concrete, actionable steps for defense. A few key things to focus on. First, prioritize identity protection. This means implementing phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, or MFA, such as hardware security keys or number matching, which are much harder for attackers to bypass than simple codes. It also means strong identity and access policies, like just-in-time access, where permissions are granted only when needed, and regular reviews of who has access to what.
And speed of response seems paramount, given those alarming breakout times we heard about earlier, just 48 minutes on average.
It absolutely is. Organizations must accelerate response times. This means modernizing detection and response capabilities with extended detection and response, or XDR, and next-generation SIEM solutions. XDR provides unified visibility across endpoints, networks, cloud, and identity systems, allowing for a much faster and more comprehensive view of an incident. C, or Security Information and Event Management, gathers and analyzes security events from across your IT infrastructure. Together, they allow for quicker detection and containment. Third, harden cloud environments. Use cloud-native application protection platforms, or CNAPPs, with cloud detection and response, along with strict access controls like role-based access and conditional policies, and regular audits for misconfigurations like exposed APIs or improperly secured storage settings.
And leveraging AI for defense, mirroring how adversaries are using it, seems like a natural countermeasure.
Precisely. Fourth, leverage AI-driven threat hunting and intelligence. This enables proactive hunting within your network, using AI to spot anomalies that human analysts might miss. Threat intelligence helps you anticipate new tradecraft and turn that intelligence into action, focusing your efforts on high-risk vulnerabilities and emerging threats. Fifth, and crucially, educate users. The human element remains the weakest link, right? So initiate robust user awareness programs to combat social engineering and phishing, making employees the first line of defense. For security teams themselves, regular tabletop exercises and red-blue team drills are essential to practice their response to various attack scenarios.
And finally, with the massive shift to SaaS applications, I imagine securing those specific environments is paramount beyond just identity.
Indeed. Sixth, secure SaaS applications. Beyond just identity management, organizations need to implement data loss prevention, encrypt sensitive data stored in SaaS apps, regularly back up critical information, conduct security assessments of their SaaS configurations, improve monitoring of activity within these applications, and rigorously review vendor security practices before adopting new SaaS solutions. Understanding these evolving threats, whether you're securing a large enterprise or just your personal digital life, is truly the foundational first step in effective defense.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening deep dive. The speed, the sophistication, the human element, and now Gen AI and mercenary spyware. It's a lot to take in, and it certainly paints a complex picture. But ultimately, it underscores a persistent challenge, doesn't it? Even democracies can, and sometimes do, fall prey to the temptation of misusing powerful surveillance technologies, blurring ethical lines in the name of security.
Indeed, it forces us to consider the profound implications when tools designed for national security can be turned against civil liberties, potentially targeting a nation's own citizens. And what's particularly potent in cases like Paragon's is the idea that spyware logs are often maintained on customer premises. If investigated transparently and independently, these logs could provide crucial insights into patterns of misuse, offering a pathway to accountability that's often elusive.
Which raises an incredibly important question for all of us, especially as informed individuals. How do we ensure effective oversight and accountability when these powerful capabilities exist and are being deployed? What role do we as citizens, as consumers, as informed individuals play in demanding transparency and action from our governments and from these powerful technology companies? It's a critical challenge for our digital future and for the health of our democracies.
It's a question that requires continuous scrutiny, engagement, and a commitment to protecting fundamental rights, even in the face of evolving threats. Yeah.
Absolutely. On that note, we want to once again thank our sponsor, Stonefly. In this complex and ever-changing landscape, robust security solutions are not just a luxury, they are an absolute necessity. Stonefly is a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions, providing secure ransomware-proof storage with essential features like air-gapped and immutable storage. For secure ransomware-proof storage, don't hesitate to contact sales at stonefly.com to schedule a demo. That's sales at stonefly.com. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the evolving enterprise of cyber threats in 2025. We hope you feel better equipped, more informed, and ready to continue your own deep dives into these vital topics. Stay safe out there.